Should we talk about Gears of War? I want to talk about Gears of War. Let's talk about Gears of War. I love talking about Gears of War. Let's do it. And then I knock at the door and I go, Carol, Carol. And then I open the door and what do I find, Mac? There is no Carol in HR.
Half the employees in this building have been made up. This office is a goddamn ghost town.
Man, I love me some of them there Gears of Wars, and you should too. Gears of War is awesome, man. And I liked one a lot. I thought one was awesome, but my favorite is 2, and I think 2 is my favorite because they really doubled down on making something that was just badass. Like they just dove headfirst into saying that we are going to make a game that just makes you feel like a total fucking badass. We're going to take the Lancer, we're going to put a fucking chainsaw on the end of it, we're going to make it super gritty, the monsters are going to be huge and rumble, and it's going to be amazing. And it was tremendous. And I love 3. I thought 3 was great, although I did feel as though 3 was when they started to sort of try to refine things and kind of move away from that badassness. Excuse me, I've just been screaming about Carol in HR. And it felt as though they were actually trying to hybridize it and sort of make it, take itself a little more seriously. And I didn't think that was a very good idea, that they were sort of trying to blend things a little more. And then, of course, when 4 came around, I actually liked 4. I thought it was pretty good, but I don't think it really held a candle to. And we're not even going to talk about Judgment, by the way. It didn't grab me quite as much as the original trilogy did. Again, it felt as though they were trying to clean things up. It looked a little too clean for me, especially as it was trying so hard to harken back to the original franchise and saying, hey, this is still a Gears of War game. It still plays the same. It's still the same, except we cleaned it up and made it look a little more neat and less of a focus on making you feel like a badass. And I didn't like that. I liked the fact that 2 doubled down on it and it was this crazy franchise. It still felt great. It still had great mechanics, great gameplay. Now you did still have to think about things like positioning, but at the same time it was nuts and it was balls to the wall, and that was fantastic. That's what I loved about the franchise. And I did feel as though that maybe they retracted a bit away from that with 4. However, it's a franchise that I always look forward to, and I don't have to worry about because it always just feels great. They've got that gameplay locked down. They know that they have a good gameplay, that they have, this tremendous gameplay formula, and they don't fuck with it. God, imagine if certain other developers knew that. So when Gears 5 rolled around, obviously, I was looking forward to it. I was looking forward to a crazy blast of a campaign and really smashing through it and having a great time with it. That's what I was looking forward to happening. And I am hugely surprised. I'm kind of knocked back a bit. Obviously the critics were talking about how this is going to be a different Gears of War experience, and that this is something that is kind of off the wall for them. And they were right. I mean, they are right. This is different. This is a different Gears of War experience. I don't want to talk about that. I'm blown away. I mean, I had an incredible time with this. I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to talk about this campaign. It's kind of, it's crazy. So essentially, what makes this so different is obviously the pacing and the structure, as you've probably seen with other reviews and stuff like that, is the structure of this game is actually completely different. Usually with a Gears of War game, you buy it knowing that you're going to be having this corridor shooter experience. It's very linear. You go from place to place and it feels like this grand journey, fights in the Locust or the robots in Gears of War 4, and really, pushing your way through and just fighting through corridor contained action constantly. And it's great looking and it's action packed and all of this. We talked about how great it is. This is different. This bookends old with new. It's a sandwich of old. That's a hard way to explain it. But think of like an ice cream sandwich, or maybe just a regular one. And the bread is the old school gameplay style, and the whatever's in the middle, be it ice cream or meat ice cream. That's disgusting. Whatever's in the middle is the new style of gameplay. So, there's going to be huge spoilers here. So do bear in mind that there will be big spoilers in this. This is a review. This is looking at the game. So you will be, there will be spoilers in this potentially, but I'll try to keep it as spoiler free as possible. The first act is the Gears of War. You run through the streets with the cobbled, broken houses and everything. It actually felt very old school, especially compared to Gears of War 4, which didn't feel so much like Gears of War, or rather look much like Gears of War. You go to big courtyards where there's big circular areas with big enemies, and then there's one bigger enemy and there's turrets, and you hunker down in your position with your squad mates fighting them off. It's the Gears of War you know and love so well. Then after Act 1 and after something so badass happens. It's awesome. Coltrane, I love Coltrane so much. Coltrane is one of my is my favorite Gears of War character, and one of my favorite characters in gaming. Fucking love Coltrane. But yeah, and he's back obviously, and he's awesome in this. But anyway, after you finish Act 1, you move on to Acts 2 and 3, which are totally different. You go into Act 2. It's this big, snowy, barren area, and you are free to explore the entire area. You're given this vehicle called the Skiv, which surprisingly, after watching the trailers and not thinking this would be the case, feels great to drive. It controls really well. It's fun. I would say that it's more fun than using a car, especially when you get air and you see a big what do you call it? A big like ramp, and you just jump off of it, and it feels great. It's awesome, and it controls really well, and it goes fast enough, and it's great. It's great for traversing the big area. But you can go to your mission objective, which is clearly marked out for you, which I appreciate, or you can explore and discover and find little side areas to go to. I personally, haven't played what I played, I would compare it most to Mass Effect Andromeda, which I like the way that happened too. Doesn't feel like a big open world, and then the missions happen to happen where you go, like in something like GTA. They do make a very good job of sort of separating the missions from the big world that you're in. So it still does feel as though you're doing a traditional Gears of War mission when you get there, but the exploration is still there, and I think that they've done a very, very good job of that. Better, I think they did it better than Mass Effect Andromeda and stuff like that, where it really does feel as though when you find a settlement or something like that, you found this new area for you to go in. And I found an abandoned train in the snow area, and I went in there in the search for stuff like ammo and weapons and things like that, and upgrade chips, which if I remember I'll talk about. And I found a boss in there, and I had to take him down. And when I did, I got an upgrade chip, which I think gave me 3. Again, I'll try to talk about that. And I got some ammo and stuff like that. And then I left the train yard and I went to my mission. Sometimes I don't like this, and I don't like it when games try to homogenize and hybridize these different old and new sort of ways of doing things, a la things like, Halo, where they try to force a new character on you when they know that the character that they already had was one of the most beloved characters in gaming. They go, oh no, we're gonna give you a different one, but we're still gonna give you a bit of the one that we know you like. I don't like that, firstly because I don't like it when a game developer tries to introduce something new but then doesn't fully commit to it. It feels as though they're slightly ashamed of what they've done of the new thing, and they want to desperately tell you, oh no, but it's still sort of like this, and what you end up with is a mush of new stuff and old stuff, and it completely diminishes both of them. There's a danger of that happening here, because we do have the old school Gears of War style in a big huge map, and we have sandwiched the old with the new with the mission structure. However, it works very well because I think the structure that they've introduced and the way that they've implemented it has really complemented itself. This sandwiching method really does work well. It gives you the Gears of War experience and then opens things up. I also think that they're not just faffing around with shit. They're not just changing characters or changing the way that layering things on top like they did in Call of Duty during the Exosuit days and just fucking around with shit. What they're doing is actually giving you something that is cool and that people should really want. We've entered into this Gears of War universe 5 times prior to this game, yes, including Judgment, unfortunately. And what this does is allows you to actually explore and take a look at the world around you that you've been fighting in, which is something that you've been so restrained and not been able to do in the past. And having a look around the world is great. Yes, it feels quite barren in the middle and there's not really much going on, but when you get to the places like the little settlements and, as I said, like derailed trains and stuff like that, when you get there, it actually feels as though you're exploring this world where everything happened, and that is accompanied by some storytelling by the characters, which really fits along well with that, where they talk about things that had happened during the war a lot, and it really just gives you a sense of understanding of the world, of knowing what's going on around you, rather than just shooting through corridor after corridor and getting a bit of story to tell you what's going on. And I love that. I absolutely love it. And what comes after the snow world and the ice world is the dusty, what would you call it, like a desert world with the red sands. I actually prefer this one. I think this one's a lot cooler. This one has the settlements with the people who who existed there before, and you can go and help them out and fight off the swarm for them and sort of liberate them in these beautiful ruins. And again, it's quite barren in the middle, but when you get to the ruins, you know, the sort of extra side bits, it's very interesting, and it does feel as though you've just sort of stumbled into something and discovered something, and that's a great feeling. And plus, when you're driving through it, particularly on a narrative level, there are these storms where these storms create trees as they come down, which is awesome. And then later on in the game, you're mounted on a turret, and you sort of have to balance shooting the trees and shooting the swarm before they get to you. And then, of course, when you're done with Act 3, you get to Act 4, and this is the final act, and it's back to that Gears of War style. But you really feel as though you've sort of powered through, and you've done so much, and you've affected these places, and you've really, you know, put a lot of effort in, because once you do the missions in these open world areas, they are huge missions, and they are, you know, there's a lot of story packed in there too, and you know, they do feel like big explosive missions, and you feel as though you've done so much because you've really like explored every nook and cranny, and you've really, I don't know, just got into these worlds that you got into, and now you're back on Earth and you're just fighting through these you know, big corridor areas. But because you've been through so much on those planets, and because you've explored, and because you've been, you know, you've really looked at this part of the world that you've never been able to, when you do get down to Earth, it feels great. It feels as though you really have had an impact on everything before powering down and just shooting everything, you know, that comes before you. The pacing really complements itself so well. I can't overstate that. You know, it's hard to explain because it's just a bunch of emotions and ways that you feel when you play the game, but I promise you the pacing is so fantastic, and the way that they've sandwiched these things in is brilliant. It is really good, and those open world sections are fantastic. You're joined by a team that, you know, obviously you've had before. I will say, with Gears of War 4, I couldn't really tell you much of what happened in Gears of War 4. It was one of those games where, yeah, it was fun to shoot and yeah, fun to play, but because I don't know, I just didn't have any interest in the characters. I wasn't a huge, and to be honest, I'm still not a huge JD fan. I don't know what it is about him. I don't know, it's just not interesting to me, just another white dude. And not, I don't know, it doesn't really have the flair of Marcus and Dom, so I didn't really like him in Gears 4, and I didn't really care for the team very much in Gears 4. However, in 5, the writing just feels so much better, and the characters are just written so much better. I don't even know how to explain it, but you know, there's a lot more humor in this. Writing wise, there is a lot more humor. I would actually equate the sort of tonal writing of this game sort of like a Marvel film almost. The jokes are actually pretty good, although sometimes, you know, kind of lame, and they don't really land. But there were a couple of moments where I actually laughed out loud at this game with some of the things that happened. But it also does strike a balance of being funny. This is easily the funniest Gears of War, by the way, but by far and away the funniest Gears of War. But it balances that and an actually engrossing and quite mature story. I'm really interested with what's going on with Kate. And it was told with beautiful cutscenes that at times felt like the Blur Halo remastered cutscenes, which were gorgeous and I think everybody loved, and at times felt like Gears of War cutscenes. I mean, they were very Gears of War, just updated, and of course they are gorgeous, and the final cutscene is beautiful too. And yeah, I liked the story. Unfortunately, yeah, it does end on a sort of Halo 2-esque, and now Gears of War 6 is gonna happen, you know, sort of ending. I'm gonna finish this fight kind of ending. But that's not to say that the writing isn't good. I did enjoy the writing, and I like the arcs. There weren't too many arcs in there, you know. Obviously there are some things that some characters are having to deal with. I like Kate's arc though. I like her trying to discover things, and I also like this sort of sub arc that they have of her trying to become the best leader of the gang that she can, because she's been thrown into this leadership role, and her having to kind of struggle with how to do that, I thought was actually really good. This is all backed up with fantastic voice acting. You spend most of your time, or at least I did, with Kate and Del, who are both brilliantly voice acted. Obviously, John DiMaggio as Marcus is fantastic. Every voice actor is brilliant. I mean, they really pulled fantastic jobs, except, is it Vars? I can't even remember his name because I tried to avoid listening to anything he said at all costs. I don't know if it's just me. I don't know if it's because I know people who speak like that in real life, and I don't particularly like them either. So, and I don't know if it was just because he was an annoying character or what, but it just seemed as though the voice acting was really off with that guy. I didn't like that character at all, not just because he was supposed to be annoying, and not just because he was just so full of himself and his jokes were honestly the jokes that didn't land the most, but I don't know, man. I really didn't like that character. But Del is fantastic. I really like Del. I think Kate's a great character. As I said, I like the way that she's trying to, you know, fulfill this leadership role. And Marcus is, you know, always fantastic. Coltrane's back. He's awesome. When he is there, he is fantastic. Yeah, the whole cast, honestly. And I like Baird as the scientist. I didn't like him in 1, 2, and 3, and I definitely didn't like him in Judgment. Was he in 1? Anyway, I definitely didn't like him in Judgment, but as a scientist, I really like his role. And of course you have Jack, which is the new robot. Jack is the second biggest change to gameplay that we have here. It's another change, and it's another change that makes total sense and benefits the game. You know, usually, as I said, it is just gun shooting and running through and stuff like this. Jack is probably the biggest surprise to me, actually, because when I saw him in the trailers and I saw him in the reviews and people were talking about how he assists you and stuff like that, I've seen stuff like that before and I never really cared for it. It's not something that I really liked. I never used it and I sort of avoided it, especially as you can upgrade him. I just usually just like getting on with the gameplay, and I don't really care for assistance and stuff like that. But man, was I wrong about Jack. Jack is great. Jack completely changes the dynamic of the game. You're not just running through and shooting people. Now you actually have more to think about. He does things like he can flash enemies. He can pulse a sort of UAV system. He has like this lightning sort of attack that he can do on people. And balance, you know, obviously there's recharge rates to what he can do, and you only get to use 2 abilities, but you can switch them up and stuff like that. And you can upgrade it. Balancing all of that is great, and using it in combat is something that I didn't expect to do, but I absolutely did. Oh, and he can also go around and pick up ammo for you if you can see it on the ground. But then if you upgrade your pulse to the full upgrade, then he'll show you where those weapons are when he uses a pulse, so you can twin those things and really pair them up, which is great. I used him a lot more than I thought I would in the campaign, and it is a great addition. And somehow the R2-D2 effect, I don't know, I think it is the R2-D2 effect. All he does is communicate with a few bleep bloop bleeps, and he's a great character. He's a fantastic, it's brilliant. I love Jack. Jack is absolutely fantastic and really helpful in the game. So that was another surprise, and it does mix up the dynamic. You're not just running through now. You think, well, maybe I should do a pulse first, or should I cloak first, or should I up my health first before I go into this battle because there's a scion over there, you know. It's really great. And as I said, you can upgrade him. I talked about that earlier. You pick up upgrade chips. It's good to have an upgrade system in Gears of War, and I'm glad it doesn't apply to the main character. I'm glad that they found a way to have an upgrade system that doesn't just apply to you and make you stronger. You know, part of Gears of War is the epic struggle of getting through, and feeling overpowered, I think, would mess with that. And I'm glad that the Coalition understand that. It's great. I mean, honestly, and you know, the story, the gameplay, the presentation, the pacing, I absolutely adore this campaign. I thought that, you know, Gears of War 4 was not bad, and I love 2, and I liked 1 a lot, and I liked 3. I would say that campaign-wise, this is my second favorite Gears of War. I really mean that, because it's not trying to hybridize stuff and stuff like that. What it's done instead is decided to take a new route and a new approach that, yes, still evokes a lot of these old school Gears of War styles, but rather than just taking the original Gears of War badassery and trying to clean it up and mature it and make it something that more people would maybe gel with, they went on a different route. They did something different, and I didn't expect it. I don't think any of us expected it, and it works great. They really considered everything in changing those things around. So the campaign is fantastic. My second favorite Gears of War campaign, and I will say that overall this is my second favorite Gears of War game. Obviously it's not flawless. You know, I consider the Gears of War gameplay to be flawless, but the game itself it's not perfect. At the moment it is quite broken. It's one of those, it's a weird situation though, because when you get into a game, both multiplayer, single player, every game mode, it runs beautifully and no hiccups, no bugs or anything like that, and I think that's great. But there are some framework issues. The glue that holds the game together is very much broken at the moment. Even in single player, you get into the game, you know, and it takes, I'm not kidding, about a minute to load the menu sometimes. And then when you go into campaign, you click campaign, you click the act you want to do, and in order to prepare the lobby, it is at the moment, and by the way, I think it's the 8th today of September, so it's a couple of days after the launch. At the moment, it takes about 2 minutes to load the lobby to start the game, and then you have to load the mission itself. And that's in single player. As I said, there aren't many, you know, bugs or glitches or anything like that. However, there is an issue with saving, where sometimes the saving icon just spins and spins and spins and sits in the background. This has led to some annoyances for me, because when that happens, it locks up basically everything but moving and shooting and, you know, enemies and stuff like that. You know, one of my missions was to get back on my skiv, and this happened, and it didn't let me get back onto the skiv, and so I had to restart the game. Another time, I was in a firefight, you know, shooting some dudes, and then I died, but it was trying to save as I died, and I tried to reload the checkpoint and it wouldn't let me, so I just had to watch the cog on the screen as my teammates were fighting other people. I tried opening the menu and then restarting for the last checkpoint, and it didn't work. I had to reboot the game. That's not good. And speaking of long wait times, we have to talk about the multiplayer, but I'm going to keep it, I think I should keep it fairly brief, because a lot of people know what's going on with the multiplayer, and the campaign is the fun part that I think is worth talking about. But multiplayer, as I said, as of the 8th, is completely broken. It's better than it was at launch. At launch it was actually genuinely just broken. I mean, you couldn't get into a game. You couldn't actually get into a game. At the moment, it's taking about I'm averaging on between 2 and 3 minutes to find a game. I understand that this is the early access Ultimate Edition, but I still think that it should probably be a bit quicker than that, seeing as the game's just come out, unless the game has completely flopped, but it hasn't. I mean, you know, sales are really strong and it's doing incredibly well. It's frustrating that we didn't have these problems 10, 15 years ago, and now we do. You know, it's what got worse. Budgeting, I'd imagine. But when you do get into a game, when you do eventually get into a game, I think it's great. It runs really well, and as you know, I said in my previous video, I've never been too into the Gears of War multiplayer. It's never been my sort of thing, but I like this. I'm enjoying it. I'm having a really good time with it, and I like the arcade mode. I know a lot of people don't. But I'm not really into non-speed respawn game modes, but I played one and I quite enjoyed the non-respawn game mode. It's crazy. I don't know what it is about this one, about this multiplayer experience, but I'm actually enjoying it quite a bit, which I've never ever got into the Gears of War multiplayer. I just, you know, I go in and I get shot by a guy spinning around doing 360 spins with an Asher, and I die and I don't respawn, and I don't know, I just didn't find that entertaining in any way. But this is actually a lot more fun, especially as you get to play as the Halo Reach guys. I love this game. I love Gears of War. I love the fact that they could have just said, look, we have a great formula here, let's just make some more missions and bring the story forward. But instead they went on a different path, and they did something that not only was different but actually made sense and enhanced the experience. Didn't just continue it, but enhanced it and made it something fresh. It feels so fresh and so brilliant. So thank you, Coalition. This game's fantastic. Thanks for watching, everybody.